Greetings and salutations, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well today. Today I have an upload that I really kind of went deep down a rabbit hole after Saturday night's live stream. And I'm really looking forward to sharing a lot of this information, or all of this information, with you. Before we jump into it though, a couple links. As many of you know, I rely on Patreon, PayPal, channel membership, and the merch to help the channel to continue to grow and go. Links to Patreon, PayPal, and channel membership is in the description below. Merch is displayed directly under the video. Also, Dogman Frightening Encounters, Volume 1 through 3, the audiobook versions. They were written and researched by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeff Nadolny. Those audiobooks are available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes, links to which are also in the description as well. And finally, last but definitely not least, if you'd really like to help support the channel to continue to grow and go, simply subscribe. It does not cost a cent. Click the like button. It takes half a second. If you don't want to miss out on any of the informative uploads that I put out daily, click that bell icon. And folks, please leave a comment and share the video. Why? Well, because all of these things really do help this channel to continue to grow and go. And yes, folks, they definitely do matter. Now, everyone, I have taken far too much of your time. Let's jump in to today's upload, shall we? All right, so Saturday's live stream, 3-hour live stream, probably the longest one I've ever done, and a really great time. But there was a, question brought up. How do you know the Kandahar giant is real? And the person was kind of adamant at it being an absolute hoax, which I do not believe it to be. And the one reason why I don't believe it to be a hoax is because a person that there is no expert in the pseudoscience of cryptozoology or paranormal research. But if there were to be experts, one of them would be Stephen Quayle, and then Tom Horn prior to him in his passing. Stephen Quayle has covered the Kandahar giant experience pretty deeply, and I went into his webpage. If anyone is not familiar with him, he has written a ton of amazing books about all types of cryptid, biblical creatures, and more. And he just an amazing, brilliant person. So I go on to his webpage. It is stevequayle.com. And I know that he had shared one or two of my videos, but then I found something else that there was a excerpt talking about me and my channel on his website, which blew me away too. Because, I mean, this guy is, to me, a person that I aspire to be like someday. And I think that's one of the big reasons why this comment kind of irked me a little bit. And it's nothing against the person at all, because we all have our own opinions in this. And it is just a science based on kind of experiences shared, sightings, this and that. But when it comes to giants and Nephilim, there are skeletal remains of these creatures. There are tools of these creatures. And one of the biggest things that, when it comes to Stephen Quayle and this Kandahar giant thing, is he wrote a book called Long Walkers. And it's a fictional look at the experience that happened. I don't think he could write a nonfiction book about that because one, I think it would have to pass through like the Department of Defense, like the Skinwalker at Pentagon had to. Yeah, Department of Defense. And but in this book, The Long Walkers, he included the actual letter that inspired him to kind of write the book. And as fiction would be, share the experience as best as he could through a fictional kind of thing. Probably not to get hammered by the Department of Defense. But his other books are all nonfiction. So that's where I'm approaching that as. He leaves the original letter from the pilot in this book. And he is, right from the very start, The Long Walkers is a fictional book. He says it. So he's not trying to fool anybody or pull the wool over anyone's eyes. So I'm going down this rabbit hole, and there's a couple different other things that I want to go through too, and some experiences, some absolutely mind-blowing experiences, military and other crazy things. But when it comes to the Kandahar giant, there are so many different experiences shared in Afghanistan about these giant light creatures. So what we're going to do is we're going to start off with the actual letter, and then I'm going to kind of keep going through and talk a little bit more about some really other crazy things as well. So let's get into it. All right. Also, the topic got brought up because we were talking about a painting that Aramik, he had sent me a whole bunch of prints the other day. I'll share that at the end with you guys too. But there was an experience in Afghanistan that I said I'd shared, and I said that reminds me of something to do with the Kandahar giant. It was about I think it was Army. They got deployed, and what happened was they were set on a mission, and the mission got changed right at the last minute. So there was no way of an infiltration or radio kind of whatever. They get into the mountains, and they are set up kind of waiting to surprise attack the Taliban. But at night, they're kind of like 30 feet maybe in front of this cave. And one of the guys just gets a real bad feeling. And he's sitting with one of his buddies. And he says, got a really bad feeling here. All of a sudden, there's this kind of baby-like cry coming from this cave. And it terrified both of these soldiers. It kept going for, 30 seconds. And it was almost like a repetitive. It was almost like it was on repeat. And then it stopped. Completely stopped. But that eerie feeling stayed throughout the night. And what he believes is that it was some sort of undisclosed cryptid that was trying to lure these soldiers into this cave. And he did state that, it definitely could not have been the Taliban because no one knew they were up there. No one. Completely isolated, and they were actually looking down at a Taliban stronghold. So that's pretty much how it all started. This is the actual letter and such of the Kandahar giant. In 2002, a United States Army patrol went missing in a very remote part of the Kandahar province, Afghanistan. Another patrol was dispatched on a search and rescue mission. One soldier commented on what they found. As we bent around this corner, you could see the opening of the cave, and then I see a lot of rocks, which is another oddity. And then bone matter. I'm not close enough to identify what kind of bones, but I did see what I knew to be a piece of our communications equipment. So I instantly think ambush. Maybe an animal, it could be anything. There was enough room in front of the cave, but it had a sheer drop-off. There was enough room that we got in a decent dispersal in case of an ambush. Not long after they had gotten into this dispersal formation, they saw something emerge from the cave that caught them all off guard. It was a man at least 12 to 15 feet in height. This is a monster, red beard. His hair was longish and past his shoulders, a scarlet red. Dan runs at him and starts shooting, which breaks all of us into reality because it was so surreal. While Dan is moving at him, another bro of mine is lying down fire, and I start to fire. He skewers Dan. He's now got him on this pike. It went right through him. He's got him, and he's coming after more. It all just clicked in. I don't know what it was, but I remember we were all like, shoot him in the face, shoot him in the face. He's taking multiple hits and he's still coming forward. Eventually, the giant was killed. The helicopter soon arrived and dropped a cargo net. A larger helicopter came by, dropping a hook, and the giant was carried off. The soldier confirmed that the red-haired, fair-skinned giant had 6 fingers on each hand and 6 toes on each foot. After they had submitted their report, the soldier recounts that they were told by top brass to edit it in particular fashion, presumably to remove any mention of this giant-like creature. Another special operations soldier in Afghanistan provides the following testimony to the incident, even though he was not a direct witness. We would come back to the base and start hearing this rumor about a unit that killed this, what they started to call a really tall person. At first, I didn't think anything of it. Then came to find out that the person they killed was actually 3 times the size of a man, had extra digits on its hand and feet, red hair, red beard, and a special unit had come in and wanted this target. Well, we heard that they killed this thing inside of a cave or the mouth of the cave, and there was common knowledge amongst the military. To hear this, when you first hear, you're thinking like, this has got to be a joke. This has got to be a hoax, right? Then after things go down a certain way and you keep hearing it, you realize at that point that it is not a joke. This pilot had landed at the base in Afghanistan and was told that they had to pick up a special cargo and that there was absolutely no cameras allowed. The pilot describes the cargo. This is the note. It was basically a dead guy, and this guy was extremely large, and when I say large, our pallet are basically, if I remember correctly, about 9 by 12 feet or so, and this guy was lying in a fetal position on that pallet, and he filled the pallet. He was around 1,000 pounds, maybe more. The pilot corroborated much more of the details given by other witnesses, including the fact that the giant was fair-skinned, red-haired, with extra digits. Now, there are a few other different experiences with giant-like creatures in Afghanistan, and I'm going to share all of these experiences with you. Actually, there is an Air Force drone controller that had spotted 3 giants in Afghanistan as well. So there's got to be some video footage of that, but our government will never release that. This is from a secondhand account. A Marine had told his friend that, well, this account is not mine, but was told to me by a Marine doing combat tour in Afghanistan. For the sake of his own job and security clearance, he asked me not to give any names or never to mention the region they were operating in. The individuals who were with him during this encounter were a task force operating under orders of the CIA. So, during a patrol checking on some local farmers, the unit was made aware of a deadly being living in a cave system near the farms. When pushed for more information, the locals were only willing to say that this being was stealing from their farms and had killed a few people who made the mistake of trying to protect their livelihood from it. Convinced the locals were being harassed by a group of Taliban fighters, half of the unit was sent to investigate and either arrest or kill any hostile forces in the area. So, with a few Humvee armed with M2 machine guns, they went out to the cave where this mysterious being supposedly lived. Upon arriving, they noticed nothing of interest. There were signs that something was living in the cave, and the soldiers found animal bones scattered around the entry. Not wanting to risk his entire unit fighting in a cave that the enemy would know very well, the sergeant that was in charge sent his 2 fastest Marines to investigate. The 2 men just gave the others a cocky grin and thumbs up before disappearing into the darkness of the mouth of the cave. 10 minutes later, nothing, not a single sound inside or outside of the cave other than idle chatter of bored Marines. Then a sound erupts from the cave, shouting and screaming, and in a matter of seconds, 2 Marines emerge from the cave at a full run, zipping past their teammates, one shouting, "Run, just run." But, like the hard-ass special force operators they were, the other soldiers stood their ground only to see a massive creature emerge from the cave standing, nearly 10 to 12 feet in height, leathery skin and red hair. In one of his massive hands was a log that it began waving at the soldiers in a very obviously threatening manner, shocked but not panicked. The sergeant in charge commanded his men to shoot the MFer, and the 12 Marines opened fire, but the bullets seemed to be doing little more than upsetting this giant creature. Finally, in desperation, one of them fired a grenade launcher at the being, blowing out a massive chunk of its flesh, exposing a small portion of ribs and ripping most of the skin and muscle. The giant retreated into the cave, and the soldiers decided the best thing to do was head back to the village and report to the rest of their unit. Clearly, this was more than a few Taliban militants. Even with a gaping wound, this giant creature was too terrifying for the Marines to willingly walk into its territory. So they headed back, reported to their CO. Of course, they were not believed and demanded proof. So that night they drove out to the cave and showed him some of the scene shredded flesh that had been blown off by the grenade launcher. From here, the report went up the chain, and nobody knows what was done about this creature. Now, there was another giant figure or creature spotted in Kandahar. Sometime between 2009 or 2008 and 9, infantry team leader reports seeing during a deployment between 2008 and 2009. While overlooking a village one fateful night, the soldier peering through his newly mounted thermal scope. As he spanned the valley, he came across a very large heat signature. He assumed was a group of Taliban fighters huddled together around a light high up in the mountains. When all of a sudden, the heat signature stood up as one being, the soldier recalled, in the trees in that area grew up to about 10 to 12 feet. And this thing was at least as tall as them, if not taller than the trees that surrounded. This creature's stride was slow and relaxed, yet it moved with incredible speed. The soldier added, noting the giant's chill yet purposeful vibe. It walked parallel to the soldier's position for a time before disappearing along a nearby spur. I think that's what I saw, a member of the ancient race of giants that descended from the fallen angels. Or it could have been something like a Sasquatch. I am not sure. This is the Air Force. An anonymous Air Force drone operator who was working in the northern part of Afghanistan during the war, scanning around, doing my thing, and looking for stuff, he recalls. One day, drone operator spots 3 giants, each standing roughly 12 feet in height. There is a ruler tool that lets you tell how wide your crosshair is. And the people were as tall as the crosshair is wide, the operator said. This was all in mid-wave infrared at night, so they showed up as black humanoid heat signatures. For 10 minutes, the operator observed them, during which time he reported that the giants tended to a fire and were performing other chores. The only interesting thing was the size, the operator writes. The goats looked like cats that were next to them. Another airman recalled doing a pre-op soak northeast of Korangal Valley, where he scanned and analyzed in real-time video feeds. According to his elaborate account, the airman watched some creatures around a fire, same one, to see if he could identify any weapons. After about 20 minutes, what we thought were 2 Taliban huddled together under a blanket. They stood up. The airman wrote, "This guy made the rest of the people around look like children. He stood up and walked over to a mud hut that he had to bend over to get into." Now, as we all know, it was not just the United States military that was over there. Australia had their service members over there as well. An Australian Army officer who was on sentry duty in the country's Uruzgan province recalls spotting a giant going for a leisurely stroll near the compound. It was lanky and wore unusual clothing. He said, by lasing the compound, the officer estimated the giant to be somewhere between 1,800 meters away. It was not in a hurry, and I followed it for about 5 minutes before it went out of my field of vision, the officer recalls, adding that he suspected the giant to be about 12 feet tall or 14 feet. Just looked like it was walking, wasn't in a hurry at all, but was aware of what was happening around it. It kept looking around, especially near the compounds. I don't know if anyone else who saw anything like it, never told anyone about it before, but it has stayed with me all of these years. Sometimes, as they say, there is more than meets the eye. So here is this is on Stephen Quayle's website. And here's what is strange is on the internet, there are different years. Like 2002, it supposedly happened. But Stephen Quayle included the letter that was from 2005. So what experience is not real, but is there a real date? And I believe Stephen Quayle, I believe him more than any kind of other internet post that talks about these things. And this is him talking about this book, Long Walker's Return of the Nephilim. Since my new book, Long Walkers, The Return of the Nephilim, is written in a fictional format derived from my movie script, I have included the personal letter that I received from the pilot who flew a 12-foot tall, dead, cannibalistic giant out of the Middle East after destroying a special force group hunting the Taliban in 2005. The giant had 6 fingers, 6 toes, and the Long Walker's book cover is very accurate artistic representation to the event. The pilot relayed to me in our subsequent phone call certain things that only someone who actually observed the giant could have possibly known. I suggest those who know what the days of Noah really means prepare accordingly. Stephen Quayle. I've ordered this book about a week ago. I'm waiting for it to come so I really am really more interested. I want to read the actual letter more than the book, because it is a fictional kind of rendition of what happened. But like Stephen Quayle has, he helps people in his kind of, is it Sky News, I believe? But The Black Awakening, The Rise of the Satanic Super Soldier, and The Coming Chaos. These are books that you can get on his website. Tom Horn, and he created just a very smart guy. Now let's get a little deeper into the Nephilim and why I believe 100% without a shadow of a doubt the people that are sending experiences from years ago that are real. I do believe the experience from the Eye of Quebec, Lake René Levasseur, which is a annular lake, an island created by a meteorite smashing into the earth thousands and thousands of years ago. There is a deep underground military base there, and a Canadian secret service kind of agent that worked with the United States military and alphabet agencies. He had gone and spotted things that were very strange, including dogmen monitoring or patrolling a part of the coast of this little island. And these dogmen went as far as swimming across this little kind of part of the lake to get to the mainland and chase he and his friend out of there. They were there as kind of after the fact. He did not work with the military during that he had already retired, but he was looking into doing more research, and that's when he saw these dogmen. And there's been multiple accounts of dogmen being spotted with giants. And a couple of days ago, I did a upload, which I always, for some reason, the uploads when I share, I think some mind-blowing information, it always gets overlooked. But I really think that the Nephilim and the creatures that are spotted with the Nephilim are from the same kind of genetic lineage. And I'll share that. I'll share why I think that right now. It's right here that really kind of, we've all heard that when these fallen angels came down, and they didn't fall. In fact, I kind of hate that term because, and they weren't cast, they were sent to earth by God. And they essentially did become fallen angels because they went against God's word. But they weren't cast out at the very moment of them coming down. The Akim and the daughters of men, the giants, produced all kinds of demons and monsters from the knowledge of their fathers, the Nephilim, and they created whatever they liked, and so were born the most strange creatures that ever existed on earth. In the book of Enoch, we read further, chapter 19. And Aril said to me, here shall stand the angels who have connected themselves with women and the spirits assuming many different forms, are defiling mankind and shall lead them astray into sacrificing to demons as gods. Here shall they stand till the day of the great judgment, in which they shall be judged till they are made an end of. And the women also of the angels who went astray shall become sirens. The mating humans and those who descended resulted in some extraordinary hybrid-like creatures, bringing forth many evil spirits from within the physical bodies. These demonic hybrids began to completely corrupt and destroy the human race. They sinned not only with the daughters of men, they began to sin against animals, beasts, birds, and reptiles, bringing forth half-human, half-animal creatures, which are so widely known throughout ancient cultures and civilizations, and many worshipped as gods. A time when all flesh was corrupted, its ways, and after a time resulting in the great flood, the deluge, the end of all flesh, which also brought the end to interbreeding between nations. Many of the children creations were also of giant stature, and many were barbaric and cruel. After these beings inhabited the earth for a time, they corrupted the ways even further by mating with animals, bringing forth an incredible creatures we view in ancient myth and legend. Many of them were worshipped as gods. In most scrolls and ancient legends, we see there were beings half human, half fish. The Dagon, Dagon, a half lion, half human, was once worshipped as a god by the Philistines. In you can imagine what strength these giant Nephilim had when their bodies were 100 meters tall. You can also imagine that for such creatures, it's nearly no problem to carry stones and build structures and such. So I shared that about a week ago. But they are talking essentially, my view of that is these creatures are now breeding, these fallen angels are now genetically creating by breeding with animals, creatures like Dogman, a lion-headed kind of creature. And what's interesting is, and someone mentioned this in the live stream on Saturday, there's a dog-headed race in Sumerian text. There's a lion-headed race, alien race, Lyrans, I believe, Lyran. And so were these aliens or are they demons? I mean, if you really think about it, and then they go through these portals, are they just doorways to alternate dimensions, hells? Who knows? But, I mean, to me, all of this, if you look at it this way, makes a hell of a lot more sense than a random kind of pack of dogmen roaming the earth, Bigfoot, just being here. They've had to come somewhere, had to have come from somewhere. And the more I look into this stuff, the more I feel like, just like I believe for the longest time, that these things have been here far longer. There are people that talk about how they were created by the government and such. And, I don't believe that at all, because there was no kind of government capable of creating these things during Marco Polo's era and time and such, when he encountered giants and dog-headed creatures. So these things have been here far longer, possibly far longer than humans. Who knows? So the other day, or about a week ago, when I did the upload that I shared a bunch of information where giant bones have been found, skeletal remains and such. And I talked a little bit about Saint Christopher and he looking, or sometimes depicted as a dog-headed human being. And he was a Canaanite, or came from Canaanite, wherever, Canaan. And I found this interesting stuff. So the Nephilim, these were the sons of God who in Genesis interbred with humans, creating a race of giants. They were called watchers in the book of Enoch. So the Nephilim can have been referred in two different books as two different things. One in the book of Enoch as the giants, the product of the watchers or the fallen angels, and the daughters of man. Then I found this, the Canaanites. This was a race of giants descended from Cain, who lived in an underworld kingdom called Arca. Note that the well-known statement in Genesis that in those days and after that there were giants on the earth is in fact not what the original text stated. What it really said was giants in the earth. So I guess what it said was in those days and after that there were giants in the earth. The Anakim is another name for the watchers. It means the descendants of Anak or Enoch, Cain's son, thought it was said that the flood had been sent to destroy them. There were still an entire city of Anakim in Canaan as late as time of Moses, and Jewish chronicler Josephus states that even in his own day, it was not uncommon for people to dig up gigantic skeletal remains. Spies sent by Moses to scout Anakim strongholds reported back that the Anakim were so large that the Hebrews seemed like grasshoppers in comparison. Which I just always found that really interesting. Like there's so many different, we talk about all of these different cultures, like Native Americans. So when we think about the Great Flood, and I've often wondered, because of my Native American heritage, that, and I do have, I'm not like 1/32nd. I have family that live in upstate New York on the reservation. I do have the CDIB card. Many Native American tribes believe that there was a flood or talk about a flood. Now, is that a reason why the Pueblo and the kind of Western Native Americans built high up in the caves, or was it because giants were hunting them? Who knows? But I know that Mohawk lore, there was a giant flood at one point. And then, so all of these kind of cultures all have their own kind of name for Nephilim. The Tritons was a race of giant gods spawned by interbreeding of Poseidon with mortal women. Some said that they escaped the flood that destroyed Atlantis. The Titans were a Greek race of giants. Atlas was the king of Atlantis, and the Triton giant, he was so large and so strong that he was often represented holding the earth upon his shoulders. Then you have, I'm going to butcher this word. I'm going to hit pause while I figure it out so I don't butcher it. Quetzalcoatl, which I already knew, South America, but this was a giant white god who appeared to native South Americans and founded their civilizations according to their folklore. He too was depicted supporting the earth on his shoulders. The Cuchulainn, another kind of, this is called the Irish Hercules, came to Ireland in a ship. His homeland was destroyed by a flood. He's been depicted very similar to the South American white god, Cuchulainn, a figure of very tall stature. So all of these cultures have had their own race of giants. Now, when that happens, if you really think about it, why would they all have a race of giants if they're separated thousands of miles from each other? You know, like 10,000 years ago, Native Americans that lived in North America had no idea what was going on in, let's just say, Greece. Yet they have similar kind of creatures and monsters. And why? Well, because they exist. They existed back then as well. That's the only logical explanation. And then I want to share this because I myself think that just this one statement out of this book is amazing. Them and Us by Danny Van Drimeny, How Neanderthal Predation Created Modern Human. So in this book, and I've shared the information in different uploads, Danny Van Drimeny discusses how there are archaeologists and anthropologists that believe, and it makes a hell of a lot more sense than what people portray Neanderthal as Fred Flintstone, that Neanderthal was a monstrous creature with a animalistic muzzle, canine sharp teeth, monstrous bite, superhuman strength, could see in the dark, had glowing kind of eyes, guttural sounds. And then in part of it, he says, why do all cultures have bugbear, ogre, yeti, werewolf, yada, yada? Well, because all cultures have had these things because they exist. Why do humans have a instinctual fear of the dark? Why do we think about monsters looking a certain way even before we've seen a monster movie as a child? Because instinctually our race of humans were hunted by these creatures. And I encourage you guys to, this book, you can get this book. It is kind of expensive. You can get it on the Kindle or on Amazon for pretty cheap. But the book itself is, I think it was like $40. But, we have unbelievable mysterious origins, the perfect predator, out in the cold, night stalkers, when mutants roamed the earth, on the edge of extinction, horror, wolves with knives, multidimensional predation, close encounters of a traumatic kind. This book dives deep into quite possibly why we are afraid of what we are afraid of, because these things exist. And I didn't think this was going to be about Dogman, but there's more information on Dogman and creatures like it in this book than you could even imagine. So, Them and Us by Danny Van Drimeny, Them and Us, How Neanderthal Predation Created Modern Human. And I remember when I talked about that book once, someone was like, Neanderthals didn't create humans. God did. And I was like, you just missed the whole concept of it's a title, and it doesn't mean that. It means these creatures existing on Earth have created modern human, and why we are afraid of what we are afraid of and why we do certain things. Just pretty crazy book, great book. Please, if you have time to read it because it blew my mind. And I know a lot of other subscribers got it and read it and were like, holy shit, thanks. Right, so like I said, I went down a rabbit hole looking at all of this stuff, and I wanted to share it all with you. But I encourage you guys to check out the Danny Van Drimeny book, Them and Us. If you're not familiar with him, check it out. It's an amazing book. And I was shocked. I was a little shocked to find out that not as many people that I thought knew who Stephen Quayle was. And go and check out Steve Quayle's website, because it really is awesome. Just a quick little thing that he talks about on his Gen 6 giants. Archaeological excavations are replete with skeletal evidence of giants. However, there is a concerted effort by mainstream science, and specifically the Smithsonian, to change the true history of giants to a false narrative that includes them. But Stephen Quayle will not stand idly by and accept their lies as truth. For over 50 years, through his broadcasting and filmmaking career, he has pursued not only the evidence that giants existed, but that they are here now and will soon return in force. In addition, he has also documented how fallen angels, giants, and aliens are all interconnected. By traveling the world and funding various film projects and archaeological expeditions with his group Gen 6 Productions. He has found evidence across the globe that these beings are real. Further, through reports, his Black Ops connections, Stephen has discovered the willful and intentional modern-day corruption of humanity's genetic code through intersplicing giant DNA with human DNA by the world's government in order to gain military superiority. So, taking Nephilim DNA, splicing it with human DNA, and what this book is about, the Black Awakening, the rise of the satanic super soldier. He also has dedicated the site to exposing the truth of this agenda in Earth's true history, but perhaps the greatest goal is to warn you that our modern era, we will see evidence of fallen angels masquerading as aliens in order to implement their agenda's end game, the Great Deception. So, I've always kind of thought a little bit, and I've talked about it. I just don't go too deep into it because, I don't want to stir the pot too much. But final experience of the night, another military kind of experience. But I think, like I said, we've got Nephilim, we've got cryptids, aliens, angels, demons, whatever. using portals or gateways to travel. I think this next experience is absolutely terrifying, and I think it has a connection to all. Let's get into it. I'm a member of the United States Army, and I have a personal experience to share that came from my deployment in Afghanistan. Due to the nature of my service, I cannot and will not share anything that will breach any level of the OPSEC and InfoSec in any way, shape, or form, to reveal any details that will or can be construed as such to compromise any operations myself and other members of the United States military conduct on a daily basis. With that being stated, here is my experience. I'm a United States Army Infantry Squad Leader, a non-commissioned officer with 10 years in service. I have 12 soldiers under my command in my squad, 10 soldiers and 2 non-commissioned officer team leaders. My soldiers are ranked E3 to E4 with 18 months of experience at the very least, with my team leaders having 4 to 5 years of experience respectively. All of us have had at least one combat deployment together, with the senior of my soldiers having 2. All of us have enough experience in our service that we are absolutely confident in our abilities and skills as infantry soldiers to know what to do and how to do it, given any and all combat situations we would encounter. So when we were given a mission as a squad separate from our platoon, we did not really give it any thought to the nature of the orders or the fact that we would be significant distance from our platoon or any ground assistance whatsoever, separate from any CAS or artillery we could call on and other assets available. I received the mission, issued the warno, made a plan, initiated movement, gathered recon, and completed the plan. I issued the opord, and we Oscar Miked. All of the making an appearance of the usual and routine mission, something we did daily and completed daily, and then we reached the objective. And it all went to what I can only describe as a hellish given form. We had vehicles that were specifically designed for being explosive resistant and armored enough to give us an edge in surviving a multitude of situations we would come across. It was dark, and we all had night vision goggles on, approaching a small village, 7 buildings under cover of darkness, being as quiet as possible, ready for anything. We entered, clearing the house after house, finding bodies, lots of bodies. So many it was hard to enter any dwelling without stepping on any of them, and I have never in 10 years seen anything as disturbing or as shocking as the conditions these bodies were in. And the sheer number was numbing to behold. Some looked as if they had been ripped or torn in half. There was no mistake of typing a description. I literally mean torn or ripped by sheer brute force. Some looked crushed as if a ton or more weight had been slammed into them, and I mean pulped. I have run over human beings with my 6-ton vehicle, and I know what crushed is when I see it. The others looked as I would expect if I were to eat a piece of raw meat with my teeth, if I had teeth like a shark or some sort of carnivore, like something had taken big chunks and kept going. The rest looked like what I would imagine some sort of mythical monster or something with claws and teeth or sharp anything would have gone through to make them so defenseless. We finally reached the end of the village and met something I can only describe as the closest to demonic as the human language can make. And it was terrifying. Thinking about it as I type this gives me chills, makes my heart feel like it's going to burst from my chest, and at any moment that thing will burst from somewhere and do unspeakable things to me before killing me, ripping me apart like a rag doll. I still have nightmares about it. First vehicle opened up on it with a 50 cal APT, and he was going cyclic. Next thing I know, I see a 6-ton armored vehicle that can take up to 80 pounds of an explosive force come rolling back, literally fly, not roll, not flip, fly. It landed in the middle of a friggin' village in pieces. 6 damn tons of armor flew 700 meters. My vehicle was next, and I have never cycled an automatic grenade launcher so fast in my whole career. I was linking belt after belt after belt. I was unjamming it almost as fast as it would jam. I'm screaming my head off on the radio at the same time, trying to get a hold of my other vehicle. Call in CAS artillery, and ordered my squad to shoot this thing with every weapon we have, even though I knew for a fact that we were all doing it anyway. And I am still screaming. I can hear screaming and gunfire that sounds like millions of voices screaming with us. Explosions and tearing metal. Absolute chaos is in control here. And I'm screaming, crying, and praying. But then the craziest thing I had ever seen happen, everything went absolutely silent. No sound, no voices, no gunfire, no explosives, nothing. The world went mute. And after that, everything slowly came back. My alpha team leader, who climbed up to me, had to slap me hard to snap me out of it, whatever hellish zone I was in. My best guess is shock, but unlike anything I had ever heard, experienced, or watched, it took hours for me to get it together and start to attempt to control the situation. Get comms with Lieutenant and come to grips. First priority was the vehicle. We couldn't raise them on comms, so I sent 2 to go see if they were alive and needed medical attention. Then I realized we didn't get a BDA on the thing we just unloaded on. I directed my driver to get closer, and I noticed something right off the bat. There was damage everywhere except for one spot, and that spot was untouched and pristine like it had never been subject to any firepower. We had direct hit on it, not a single impact. There was no sign of that thing anywhere, not even a footprint. I had been deployed 7 times in 10 years, and never have I seen anyone or anything walk away from so much firepower, ever. I know for a fact that no human on Earth could. My 5 soldiers of the first vehicle lived miraculously due to the cab being reinforced, but suffered some severe blunt force trauma. Enough that all 5 in the vehicle were immediately given medical discharge and 100% disability in a few months later. My other soldiers are all receiving the best psychological care possible. I am undergoing psychological evaluation as well as the report to give to my command. The treatment given to me and to my squad was no surprise. However, the way my report of the incident was handled and what happened after is very confusing and frustrating. No more about this has been mentioned or acknowledged again. I don't care if somebody believes me or anymore. As every time I am asked about it and I answer, I am met with reactions of disbelief or pity and sympathy for my damaged mental state. I am even attempting to be cleared to continue my service, and I am forced to lie. I'm even attempting to be cleared to continue my service, and I am forced to lie to my counselors and therapists about my progress in recovering from my experience. I am still haunted by the incident, and it gives me a racing heart just thinking of it. Anyway, thank you for allowing me to share. So, he doesn't even describe what they saw because I'm assuming there is kind of no, like he said, no words in the human language, but then it disappears. There's forces beyond our comprehension. Was that a demon? Was it an alien? Was it something completely different? Was there a portal present or a Stargate? It's kind of crazy that the Egyptians talk about Stargates and there's signs of a nuclear war happening 3,000 years ago in the Middle East. It's just all a little weird if you really think about it. And these creatures, these dogmen, these Bigfoot, and these other creatures, these crawlers, which look a lot like a human being mixed with some kind of savage kind of animal and a gray alien. There's too many connections to even say that there is no connection. So, and with that, I'd like to thank you all for supporting the channel. It is, after all, your support that keeps this channel growing and going, and honestly what gives us all a place and a chance to share our experiences and theories judgment-free. Everyone is simply treated with the respect that we all deserve, and that is all because of you guys, so thank you. Please stay safe, happy, healthy, and ever vigilant, keeping an eye on our children, pets, family, and friends. These creatures are real, they are out there, and they are dangerous. Share this information with those you love and care about, and it may just help save their lives someday. And until next time, never stop asking questions, never stop searching for the truth, and God bless you all.